Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll be covering from the very first round of the newly started Qatar Masters 2023. It is Magnus Carlsen versus Indian international master Srihari. Maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong. If I am, do correct me in the comment section. And well, it's a classical tournament, so of course we are going to enjoy a lot of great classical chess, and the tournament features some very strong players like former world champion Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, Anish Giri, Nodirbek Abdusattorov, Ootes, Arjun Ergesi, Parham Maksudlu, and so on. The list is really great. And as it's a classical event, it's a 1.5 hour per player, plus you get additional time 30 minutes after 40 moves have been played. So let's check it out. The tournament prize fund is $110,000. I haven't checked how much for the first place, but you know, it's obviously quite a lot as they you know, received such a fine lineup. So let's check it out. This game is basically a bar fight that Srihari, or Srihari, I think it's Srihari, challenges Magnus to, and Magnus accepts the challenge to a bar fight. So let's check it out. Magnus opens with c4. He goes for the English opening, and we have c6. This is basically an invitation to transpose into the pawn of attack of the Karo Khan, sort of the accelerated version. But we have d4 by Magnus, and now pawn to d5, transposing into the Slav defense, knight to f3, and now knight to f6. We have pawn to g3. Magnus, as usual, getting ready to fianchetto his light square bishop, and bishop to f5. We have knight to c3 and e6. So very standard stuff here. You get your light square bishop out of the cage, and then you put your pawns on light square. So you don't care if the knight trades itself for the bishop, because you will have a dark square bishop to go in between those pawns on light squares. So Magnus does go for that, knight to h4, and now d captures on c4. You could also go for something like bishop to e4 first, going after the rook. White would challenge the bishop, and once the bishop moves, even something like queen to b3 can be played going after b7. So it's also very standard stuff. But in the game, Srihari went for d captures on c4. We have knight captures on f5, and now e captures on f5. And here, okay, Magnus is down a pawn, but Srihari has a double set of double pawns. So well, it can be useful, but also it looks a bit weird. We have pawn to e3 by Magnus, and now bishop to d6. Now, if you want to defend your pawn with pawn to b5, it's, you know, from the Catalan that it's a bit too much, too optimistic. For example, bishop g2 already looking very strong, and if b4, you can even throw in a nice knight to e2, then you're going to collect the pawns here, queen c2, and black will just be in a lot of problems. So it's best just to give back material, bishop to d6, and Magnus wins the pawn back. So bishop captures on c4, castles, and now queen to f3, putting pressure on the f5 pawn, and just pawn to g6. Okay, very nicely done. Pawn to h3, and now there is a game where c5 was played, but here we have queen to e7, and it is now, as of move 11, that we have a completely new game. So, okay, Magnus continues with castles, and now pawn to h5, not allowing g4 to be played. Magnus plays rook to e1. He wants to play pawn to e4, as he now will control it with queen, rook, and knight. And Srihari stops it. He plays knight to e4. We have pawn to g4 by Magnus, and now h captures on g4. Now, we could check out a line, for example, pawn to b5 to attack the bishop, bishop d3, and then knight g5 to attack the queen. But now queen g2, and it looks very dangerous for white as well, but it's actually perfectly fine. For example, f captures, h captures, and now the problem is, yes, you could go for something like h4, but now pawn to e4, preparing pawn to e5, then the bishop comes alive, you will win this pawn, and the white will have a much better position. And the problem with h3 is that white very gladly trades queens. Captures, 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 and now king captures on g2. It's actually white who will be up a pawn at the end of this variation with a very strong center, and just a very nice game, a much better game, of course. So after g4, we have h captures on g4, h captures, and now bishop to b4. Now, you could go for knight captures on c3, and maybe you even should, and after b captures, offer a queen trade, but even a queen trade will not be that spectacular for black. For example, captures, captures, and captures. Now e4 is coming. It's equal material, but, sorry, not even equal material. Magnus would be down a pawn, but he would have the very strong bishop pair, and again, this would, of course, favor white. So here we have bishop to b4, putting pressure on the knight here. It's not the cleanest way to play, but it's definitely comes with a threat. So Magnus goes for G captures on f5, we have knight captures on c3, and now B captures on c3. Bishop captures attacks both of Magnus's rooks, and Magnus plays queen to g4. Now, what's the idea behind this rook sacrifice? Well, if you take either rook, then it's merely a matter of queen captures on g6 as the f-pawn is pinned, and once the king moves, queen to h6 with check. King to g8, and now king h2. There is no defense against rook to g1 checkmate. So here, after this queen to g4 move, king to g7 was played, but now Magnus has a one move that is so extremely strong that it just wins the game on the spot. Of course, you have to calculate, but it does win the game. So feel free to pause the video and try to find this absolute beast of a move while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting that the queen and king are in a very unfavorable position. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is pawn to e4. With this move, Magnus continues offering a full rook or full rooks. And he doesn't care regardless of what black does. The position is just so winning for white with this massive pawn center, and it's incredible that you can actually attack like this with your king wide open. But the problem is, and I'm just going to show you a few lines because it's a classical game and you know it's a really nice position. Let's say you capture a rook. What happens? Because that was played in the game, so we're not going to start with that. But let's say you don't accept. Let's say you play bishop captures on d4, you hold the e5 pawn. You don't really hold it, just bishop e5, and now after bishop captures on e5, you don't go for pawn to f4, you actually go for bishop to g5. You attack the queen, and now after f6, as it's pretty much your only move, now comes bishop to h6 with check, opening up the G file for the queen. So if you capture, queen captures on g6 is checkmate, and if you go up the board, then just bishop captures on f8, attacks the queen, and once the queen captures, king to g2, and there is no defense against the rook to h1. You could even play g5, doesn't matter. Queen to h5, check, king to g7, and now rook to h1, and there's no stopping checkmate because the bishop controls all of the light squares here. So that's one way to do it. Another way is to ignore the rooks, ignore the pawn, maybe play knight to d7, just try to bring another defender into the game. Then it's a matter of queen h3. And now you are going after the h6 pawn, h6 square, so rook to h8, and now just queen captures on c3. So you collect a piece and you just keep a better position. And okay, you do have to be a little bit careful. Of course, black can threaten checkmate, but queen f3 stops that. And once, let's say, queen h2 check, king to f1, and rook to h3 is played, attacking the white queen. Yes, looks dangerous, but bishop f4, black has to trade queens, and white is up a full piece. Rook captures on f3, bishop captures on h2, you're going to play g captures, and okay. Black is up a pawn, but Magnus would be up a full piece. He would have the bishop pair and a completely winning position. So that's why after pawn to e4, Srihari said, well, okay, we have to go for the rook. Bishop captures on a1 was played, but now comes bishop to g5. That's the move. Attacking the queen, and there's not much you can do. If you block with f6 now, again bishop to h6, and it's pretty much the same variation, even maybe a nicer one, because after king moves, you can even play f captures on g6, and there is no defense against pawn to g7. It's just a crushing idea. Also queen to h5, I mean, with the advancement of black's f-pawn and the bishop controlling this diagonal, this is just brutal. So after bishop g5, queen to b4 was played, now attacking the bishop and threatening the rook here with check, and now f6 with check. We have king to g8, and now rook captures on a1. There was even a cooler way for Magnus to finish this, and that's king to g2, sort of sacrificing the rook on e1, but it is, I mean, greatly unnecessary. I'm just going to show it because it's possible. And now you play bishop e3 with the same threat of queen captures on g6. And once black blocks this, you will deliver a check. King has to go to g8, and now queen h6. There is no stopping checkmate here. So instead, rook captures on a1 was played by Magnus. Pretty much the same thing, only you don't, you know, give up the rook for no reason. Knight to d7, trying to get rid of the f6 pawn, but it doesn't really work. Here, Magnus just played queen to h3. Also, you could capture the knight, but I mean, there's no reason to do that. Queen to h3, and he was in this position on move 23 that Srihari resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So very nicely done by Magnus. As usual, he continues his winning streak in classical chess. Not a winning streak, but a non-losing streak, as okay, he did win like maybe his 5 or 4 classical games in a row, but then he drew one in the for his club Offerspiel, and you know, it wasn't like all the games were winning, but still, I mean, very impressive. And he's very, very close to breaking 28.50 again in classical. I think he's around 28.45, 28.46, so very nicely done. And the reason why there's no defense against this is that even if you block, even if you go after the f6 pawn, let's say queen to h6, and you win the f6 pawn, you have another problem. Queen captures on g6, and now everything just falls. King goes here, you're gonna pick up this with check, you have to give up the queen, and now there's even a very cool way of finishing this. Queen to h4 check, king to g7, queen to g5 check, king to h7, and now you even allow your queen to be skewered, because after rook to g8, sort of winning back material, there's rook to h1 checkmate. So I mean, chess is just a lot of fun like that, very often. So after queen to h3, Srihari resigned, and a very nice victory for Magnus Carlsen against this very, very strong 18-year-old international master from India. Well, like I said, he challenged Magnus to a bar fight. Magnus, you know, picked up the glove, accepted the challenge, and he emerged victorious. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. First game that we are covering from the Qatar Masters tournament. If you guys have any that you've enjoyed, do hashtag suggestion, and I will try to cover it. As the tournament is played simultaneously with the US Chess Championship, I will of course try to cover both, but I will mostly focus on the best games. So yeah, once again, really hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Mr. Hoodie Guy, Petr Marinov, an anonymous person, Roger Stone, and no need to mention my name in the video, for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.